Thank you, everyone, for attending our Office of Global Experiences virtual fair today. We have a live info session with one of our exchange partners, Kyungpook University in South Korea. Hopefully, I said that okay.
It's fine.
And the inbound coordinator is Dustin Waters. So, Dustin Waters will talk today about um, the exchange program that we have at Kyungpook University in South Korea, and I highly encourage you all to consider it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan, for that introduction. A real quick overview. Hi, my name is Dustin Waters, and I help with the inbound coordination as well as just international program advising. You may see another video of me advertising it in a pretty rah-rah style if you dig deep enough. But I was an exchange student at Kyungpook National University when I was in college, and I came back after several years after I graduated. I came back to Korea. Always that experience of studying abroad in Korea had a huge impact on my life. I loved it, and I loved being in Korea. I never would have been exposed to it otherwise. And so I made my way back to Korea. I made my way back to the same city called Daegu, where Kyungpook National University is located. And after many years of teaching English and doing other odd jobs, I got a job at the Office of International Affairs here. And I couldn't be more proud to talk on behalf of KNU to all of you. We're located about an hour and a half train ride outside of Seoul. We're in no small city by any means. It's 2.5 million people, so Asian small, but huge. And Seoul is very accessible. If you want to head up to Seoul, it's easy to get there. The beach is about an hour away, 45 minutes. We're surrounded by heavy industry. So if you're interested in kind of Korean tech, be it Hyundai or Samsung, LG, something like that, we have a lot of those industries are located uh, close around us. In fact, Samsung was created here in Daegu way back when. If you're interested in UNESCO World Heritage Sites, we're surrounded by them. So it really gives a good sense of like authentic Korea. If you're interested in Korea to begin with, this is a great place to come see it. You have access to the whole country here. Um, that being said, for academics, we are a national university where we've been ranked the #1 national university in Korea for several years running. We're a comprehensive university, so kind of no matter your major or your interest, we have a department for that mostly. And we have typically somewhere between 120 to 150 classes offered in English. So if you're here for a semester, or even if you want to push it for 2 semesters, if you feel adventurous, we have classes for you to take, kind of no matter what your interest is. As long as you speak English, you should be fine taking classes here. I think that's a pretty good broad introduction to KNU, and then I'll kind of open it up to the professional staff, University of Wisconsin-Whitewater, knowing what your students may be interested in hearing to kind of direct the questions from here.
So following along, Dustin, on having it like for Americans to get around in Daegu and also just Korea in general with English?
Yeah, okay, that's a great question.
Are they able to do it?
Actually, yeah, thanks in a large part to people like me who way back when had an interest in Korea and came back as English teachers. The government for 15, 20 years now has a huge push towards teaching English to the young students starting in elementary school, middle school, high school. So nowadays, getting around in English is fairly easy. My wife doesn't speak any Korean whatsoever, and she's lived here now for 10 years. She should probably start learning some Korean. but I mean, so like getting around, shopping, taxis, public transportation is really, you don't need to know Korean to live here. And that's kind of a double-edged sword. So some people, you will be immersed in the culture, but it's there for you to embrace as much as you want to. It's there for the taking. If you don't embrace it, it won't be thrust upon you. So you can very easily walk around, travel all over Korea and never learn any Korean whatsoever. Or if you want to learn Korean, it's, you know, there's people and teachers and roommates to engage with. So I wouldn't think of that as being a daunting aspect of coming to Korea.
Is there at KNU, are there introductory classes, or is that something students would have to pursue outside of their normal course load?
Yeah, there are actually. There are quite a few. You can be as specific as Korean language, introduction to Korean language, and learn like from the alphabet on up. And they'll place you into whatever level you're at. So if you've done some studying before you got here, well, we won't put you in the easiest level or in the beginner level. But then there's also other ways of tackling it. We have Korean history classes, culture classes, geography classes, and so you can kind of attack it at other from other angles as well. But yeah, we do have those classes here, and they're pretty good. I took many of them when I was a student here.
Dustin, could you talk a little bit about the accommodations that students can, that are offered for students?
Yeah, I think well, first, being so we're a university of 40,000 students. We're a massive university, and we have dorms galore. So we can guarantee to any student who applies for the dorm that they will be placed in the dorm, and that application for the dorm is a part of applying to be an exchange student here. That'll be worked into it, so it's not a separate concern that you need to worry about. Off-campus housing is also an option, though the Office of International Affairs doesn't directly aid with finding off-campus housing. Um, you will be assigned a buddy. So before you even arrive in Korea, you'll be matched with a local student who is tasked with making sure that you're independent in Korea as soon as possible. And so if you are looking for off-campus housing, perhaps that buddy can help you. And many people have done that, and that's been successful. The dorms in KNU, there are some rules that are different than perhaps American dorms would have. They're all um, they're not co-ed, so the men have their area and the women have their area, and you're not to mix. There's also a curfew, which sometimes comes up. Students not enjoying a curfew. The curfew is 1 a.m. until 5 a.m. and you just accumulate penalty points if you go back home between those times. And so I'd say for 90% of the students, these are annoyances that can be dealt with or aren't annoying at all. But for the others who don't want to put up with that, I would say by all means go find some off-campus housing. And so kind of no matter what your preference is, you should be fine. And then cost-wise, I know that's going to be a concern, but uh, on-campus housing ranges from about $500 a semester to $1,000 a semester, not per month, per semester. And that depends on your meal plan. So if you go with like one meal a day or no meals a day, if that's an option, you may be around the $500 range. If you go for like 3 meals a day every day, which I don't recommend, you should be out and about looking at restaurants. That could put you up into the $1,000 range. If you're off campus, you're probably around $400 to $500 a month, but affordable, I think, is the underlining message here is it's affordable.
Can you talk about how students get around campus, how far away things are, what are some areas of town they tend to go to, and how they get there?
Yeah, great. So behind me, you can see the campus. It's a beautiful day today. We have this is the building I'm in. The main administrative building is the building I'm in right now. Um, the campus is pretty large. It would take you a good 45 minutes to perhaps even an hour to circumnavigate the campus. It has all sorts of buildings. So I wouldn't say that you need to take this into consideration when signing up for classes. There's anywhere from 10 to 15-minute breaks. The campus is sprawling. It's a fairly good-looking campus. There's a lot of nature in it, and it's located very central to downtown. It's a little north of downtown. So right as you step off campus, you're in it. You're in this huge, massive city. The airport is about, I don't know, 4 or 5 miles up that way. Downtown is 4 or 5 miles that way. The mountains are 4 or 5 miles north of us. And so when you're on the campus, you kind of get this respite. You kind of get this calming academic uh, feeling, but the bustling city is right there. Getting around campus, most students just walk. Few students have bicycles. Few students have like little mopeds, like motorized scooters. There's also now with your app, you can like scan the QR code and they have all these electronic scooters just laying around. So those are fun. You can do that. But for the most part, people just walk around campus. If you're going off campus, the bus system is great. Taxis are everywhere. Right outside the main gate, which is the north gate, there's always a line of taxis there. It will cost you $5 to go a fairly far distance. So you're looking at $3 to $5 to get downtown, something like that. $3 to $5 to get to the mountains. Daegu City has all types of entertainment. If you're looking for shopping, we got it. Sports, international airport, uh, everything. It's a huge city. We got it all. If you're looking for food from back home, there's Western food here everywhere. Not just like your McDonald's or your KFCs or your Starbucks, but there's like mom and pop restaurants that have burgers and pizza. If you're looking for Asian food, we got that, from Thai to Japanese. So it's got everything you need, or that you could be. And that's a reason that makes it easy to stay here for so long. For me, is I never have to worry about entertainment or food. But the bus system in Korea is very prompt. The buses cover the whole city. It's like $1 to get on the bus, but you can buy a card with gives you a discount. So I would say the students that are here mostly just take the city buses. We do have a subway system, though unfortunately there's not really any stops that are super close to KNU. And worst case scenario, you're taking a taxi. It's very cheap and it's going to get you right to where you're going. And taxis will bring you onto campus right to your dorm if you want. So public transportation is a very, very convenient thing here. And if you're going to intercity, if you're going to Seoul or Busan or some other city, there there are big hubs that have buses running every 20 minutes or so. And so, yeah, traveling around the country, traveling around the city, traveling around the campus is all pretty convenient.
Yeah, I can actually
Yeah.
vouch for that. The taxis were the way when I was in Korea, that's the way I traveled a lot, and it wasn't expensive at all compared to taxis in Japan, which blew my mind because that was the only experience I had with taxis at the time. But no, it's very. I think I went from like downtown to like I forgot what it's called, Seoul Tower, and
Mhm.
it cost me like I don't know, maybe $5 or something like that. It wasn't that
Mm.
expensive. So
And no tipping. This
yeah,
is you're not in America no more. There is no tipping. Restaurant, taxi, at all. You do not tip for anything here.
yeah, that's great. Um, Justin, can you explain a little bit of some of the protocols that are now in place for COVID prevention
Mhm.
and just
Yeah.
some of the changes that you've seen?
Yeah, so I'll start macro and work micro. Macro, the government has required now that anybody entering Korea must do 2 weeks of self-isolation. I don't know when that will change, but just as of this conversation, that's the situation. It's been like that for the last few months. There are a few options, and they're pretty strict about it. So the government will monitor you for those 2 weeks. They will have you download an app onto your phone that will track you. They will have a contact person here. The government will either be your contact person or you can do it a different way. I'll get into that in a second. And then they will make sure that you stay in a specific area, wherever that may be, for 2 weeks. They will COVID test you upon entry, and they will COVID test you at the end of those 2 weeks. And at no expense to you, the government will do the COVID testing. And then you'll be released. And then you will be as free as me or anybody else in Korea to roam around the country. Now, how you do that quarantine is up to you. You have three choices. You have the government option, where the government will put you in a hotel and run the whole thing for you. It's the most seamless way. It's the easiest way of doing it. It's also the most costly. That's about $1,400 for those 2 weeks, about $100 a day. Another option would be to find a friend or an Airbnb here that's willing to put you up, and that's a little bit of a headache for that person. I know I've done it, to put up somebody who's going through that quarantine. But that is another option, and that's as expensive or cheap as that person asks. The third option that you have if you're coming to KNU, we have an abundance of dorms, and we emptied out one of our dorms and made it the quarantine dorm for this semester. And so students coming in from abroad were, as long as they had their student visa upon entry, which you should always have your student visa upon entry. The government will put you on a special bus to a special train that will take you down to Daegu, where you will take your first COVID test, and then you can enter our dorms. And we put up 140, 150 students at their expense. It was $600, pretty much all said and done, per student. But give you a place to stay, feed you. If you need anything, like any necessities, we would get you that, like toilet paper or soap or that kind of stuff. So those are your three options as it pertains to entering Korea during the days of COVID. Once you're here, anytime that you're outside, you will face extreme social pressure to wear a mask. Not wearing a mask is really not an option, and it's not a law. Police aren't going to do anything about it, but the people around you will want you to wear a mask because they don't know where you've been, and so there's not that sense of trust. So just wear a mask to signal, hey, I don't know, but I'm not trying to infect you with anything. But restaurants are operational, bars are going. I mean, pretty much every life, day-to-day life is fairly unchanged, except for people are wearing masks. But if you're in a restaurant, you take your mask off, you eat. If you're sipping on an iced coffee, you have your mask down, you're sipping on it. People aren't, very strict about it, but yeah, it's kind of a general courtesy to just have your mask on all if you're around people and not eating. And then beyond that, some buildings that you enter may have you write down your information. Some buildings may have their side doors locked, so you have to come in through a main door that will check your temperature as you enter. But it's not very overwhelming right now. In terms of a student life, probably the biggest difference would be that many of our courses are online. But even so, I would still say it's a good time to come to Korea. And it may even be more freeing. You don't even have to go physically go to the classroom. If you're out and about, you can check your courses at your own free time and run around the country. every once in a while there will be a little uptick in numbers. And we're talking like double digits for the whole country. So we're around 10 to 20 new cases per day for the entire country. Once that number starts getting over 100, like there may be a demonstration or a holiday where people traveled and now it kind of starts flaring up, the government may say, okay, everybody, don't travel, just keep it cool for a couple weeks. And during those times, your dorm may ask you not to travel overnight. So we've run into that a couple times this past semester where the dorm said basically to students like, have fun in Daegu, but don't take an overnight trip someplace else. So that would probably be the worst case scenario for somebody who's here for a huge blowout adventure, is that for a couple weeks of that adventure you may be constricted to just stay in Daegu. But yeah, Korea's done a pretty good job of handling COVID-19 so far. There's a long answer for your question.
That's great. It really helps kind of just give an image of what students should be expecting when they get there, and I think that helps more than anything. Just making sure that they're aware of what's going on and what they need to be doing. So
Yeah, yeah. I mean, schools are open. I mean, my daughters are both going to school, elementary, middle school, and so pretty normal now. But the thing is, if there is a rule, you just respect the rule and then go about your life. And if you can kind of do that, you should be fine.
I was wondering, Dustin, in normal circumstances, how much traveling do students tend to do, and where do they tend to go?
Yeah, so there is a ton of options for traveling, both domestic and international, especially coming from the States, or specifically Wisconsin. You're on the other side of the world, and there is an international airport 5 miles down the road from here. And so close countries like Japan, the Philippines, China, depending on what your passport is. Hong Kong is easy for Americans. Macau, Taiwan, that's all easy for Americans. Mainland China is a little, you're gonna have to go through some visa fun. But all those countries are really close, and they're 2 hour, 1, 2, 3 hour plane rides away. And there's all sorts of budget airlines. So you can even do like on a long weekend, you can fly to Manila on a long weekend. Now you're depending on what your budget is, that may not be an option, but it's not going to break the bank to go to Japan. Japan is probably the most common destination for students here, international. But domestic, there's Seoul. Seoul's very easy to get to, very easy to spend a few days in. Like a weekend in Seoul is most students do that 2 or 3 times while they're here. Busan is closer. Busan's not as well known of a city as Seoul is, but it's a beach city. It's our second largest city in Korea. It's located on the southern beach. It's beautiful. It's great. Busan's my favorite city in Korea. It's an hour away. Jeju is an island off the south coast of Korea. And I would say during normal times, there's literally a flight from Daegu to Jeju every 30, 45 minutes, and they're cheap. It's just like, it's one of the most common domestic destinations for Koreans. Every city, every airport has flights to Jeju. That's they call it Korea's Hawaii. I graduated from University of Hawaii. It's close. But it's nice. Jeju's a good place to go. And if you just want to stay on the mainland, Korea, really depending on what your interest is, there's so much stuff. It's fairly mountainous. So if you like kind of walking through mountains, like hiking, I guess, there are endless places for you to go hiking. It's surrounded by the ocean on 3 sides. So there's good beaches, there's good swimming. Not really great skiing though, so they do have skiing. It's just not the best. Maybe coming from Wisconsin, go back home and go skiing again. But if you're in it for seeing the sights or traditional, Korea's, America's got a couple hundred years of history. Korea's got a couple thousand years of history. So you pick a date and time you want to go see, and there's temples, there's museums, there's so much stuff to see here in Korea. It'll really blow your mind, the options that are here. And it's kind of up to you to go budget your time and prioritize what you want to see. I would say the main lamentation of an outgoing student that I hear is I I waited. I didn't go see these things. I'm leaving Korea in 3 weeks and I never went to Japan, or I'm leaving Korea in 3 weeks and I didn't do this or that or the other thing. And I think there's so many options that you kind of feel like you can kick it down the road. And I would say, upon arrival, go out and see it because you're not going to run out of things to see.
Yeah, that's great advice, Dustin. I think for any student going anywhere, it's very true.
Yeah.
Thing I was wondering is if you could say a little bit about what, and again, in normal times, what is the Korean classroom experience like, especially, relative to a U.S. environment?
Yeah, it's a little different. It depends on the teacher. It depends on the class. So I was here a number of years ago, and I was an American student. I was in class, kind of leaned back like this, like listening to the lecture. And if I had to yawn, I'd yawn. And if I didn't agree with the teacher, I'd let them know. And they didn't appreciate that so much back then. It's more of like we're delivering a message to you. So that's the old traditional Korean education system of teacher is next to God. But I would say nowadays, with kind of the younger generation seeping into academia and a lot of the professors being like English speakers, which means they have some background with the West, and you'll see a lot more group activities, a lot more kind of interactive classrooms than you did several years ago. So it's always changing. It will be a different dynamic than your classroom back home. Um, uh, that's a good question. I haven't been a student in the classroom in a while. I think maybe the most difficult adjustment would be if you get a teacher who really considers himself the professor and he wants you to treat him as the professor. That may be a little difficult, but for the most part, we've kind of figured out that the I don't want to say good and bad. Those are bad labels for teachers, but we've found the good and bad ones, and we kind of can steer students towards a professor that's been higher rated, or the students have reacted to more positively, and professors that students have not reacted to positively in the past or have been more difficult to interact with, we can kind of steer the students away from them. But in terms of the classroom, so you as the American student or you as the non-Korean student, wherever you may be from, you're going to be, it's going to be not half and half, but there will be Korean students and there will be non-Korean students. And oftentimes what happens is they kind of click up, and the Korean students may have a difficult time engaging with the non-Korean students and vice versa. So it does take a little bit of a commitment on your part if you want to interact with the local students to go do that. The Korean students often historically can be a little shy. They're not speaking up, timid because it's their second language, speaking English. So the more that you can go be welcoming to the locals, as odd as that may seem, I think the more it'll help you get along in the classroom. But I'd say the classrooms now are modern. They're using modern techniques. A lot of cutting edge, like like flipped classroom, or like, one like a teacher from a partner university being in on the lecture is common. And so I don't have a great succinct answer for what you can expect in the classroom, just being removed from it for so long. I don't really have, and maybe that speaks well in that I'm not getting pulled aside by the international students saying, "Hey, Dustin, help me through this problem in the classroom." So I'm gonna hope that in this regard, no news is good news.
Yeah. No, that's a very helpful answer.
All right. Do we have any more questions for Dustin Waters, KNU?
I think I'm good on my end.
Yeah, I don't know if I have anything really else that I want to add. Your questions have been pretty comprehensive and really given me a chance to say really all that I want to say about KNU. I think anything else I'd be adding right now would just be repeating something I've already said. So kind of the cherry on top would be that us at the Office of International Affairs are here to help you in most facets of your life here. We will give you a buddy. We will take you on excursions, cultural excursions to wear the Korean clothing, to eat the traditional food, to see the ancient sites. So the Office of International Affairs is here to help you, kind of no matter wherever we can, and that may be us redirecting you towards another person or entity. But we have a large staff here, and that's if you boil down what our job is, it's to make sure you have a good time here. And if you're interested in KNU, the place to start is your home university's Office of International Affairs. So go and talk to these gentlemen that I'm speaking to right now, and they should be able to start you along the path to getting here to Kyungpook National University.
There you go. Thank you, Dustin, for that.
Thank you.
Students, you can pay Whitewater's tuition and stay at Whitewater with the cornfields, or go to South Korea. Have
Yeah.
some South Korean barbecue, dance to K-pop, take classes for your major. Sounds
Yeah.
like a no-brainer to me. We'll get students to you pretty soon, I hope. So thank you for your presentation. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for giving me the platform, and we look forward to seeing your students here.
Yeah. Thanks, Dustin.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you.
It was really good.